chose not to. And for whatever reason, well, we all have schedules, we all have lives and whatnot. And sometimes too, in our community, a lot of people complain. And I remember some criticisms that went out when we first began taking account of shootings and murders that happened after the marathon. And the criticisms were, what are you marking these numbers for? What are you trying to insinuate about the Boston Marathon? And don't you see it's completely different and all that? Our contention was, and has been long before that, about the devaluation of black and brown lives. Meaning that our lives don't seem as valuable in mainstream society and the media based on the reaction to our deaths, our plights, as it is to our white counterparts. So I'll give you a couple examples of that. Many of you may know, some of you here have worked with groups like missing and black exploited children, correct? So there's a disparity, particularly in the media, when a young white child goes missing and it goes on CNN. Young black children missing every day, not so much, right? That's one way that we can evidence what I'm telling you, that black and brown lives are not valued the same in this city, in this state, and in this country. We can also evidence that by the fact of something that I've been working on for many years, and many of you here who's worked with me, and I've worked with you. And another one of those things is the problems that we've had with the police. So in a small city like Boston, we've had about 17, 18 people shot by the Boston police, shot and killed by the Boston police. Each and every single one of those is black, Latino, or Cape Verdean. There has never been an instance where the Boston police has accidentally shot a young white man in the city of Boston. But black, Latino, and Cape Verdean people are accidentally, quote unquote, shot. Another way that we can prove and demonstrate and evidence the devaluation of black life. Another was this case of the marathon. We all agree here that that was a tragic situation. They've classified it as an act of terror. I'm a little bit more conservative with terms like that because although I could say it is an act of terror, I don't believe it was part of some organized plot. I believe it was some dumb kids who got mixed up into something that they had no business messing with and took it to an extreme level. But in that, you had, I think the number ended up being like 278 people who were injured, loss of limbs, so on and so forth. You had 3 people who died at the scene, and then you had the officer who subsequently lost his life, the MIT officer who subsequently lost his life. And the reaction to that, nationwide, this whole emerging of Boston Strong and One Boston. And before that, in political circles, people were talking about a new Boston. And I would say that really we live in a society right here in Boston, Massachusetts, where despite the well-intentions of many white citizens who are of their right minds, despite their good intentions, that we deal with race in this city, I would contend like no other in the nation.
Yes, we do.
And I believe that really it is almost indicative of that old classic tale, the tale of 2 cities, because I don't believe there's one Boston. There's at least 2.
Amen.
At least 2.
That's true.
I bet some immigrant communities would say there's 3.
That's right.
Some of our gay and lesbian folks might say there's 4. But there certainly is not one Boston, right? And then another case happened recently. I forget what number we were on right there. It was probably number 94 or something like that. And the young white girl, Amy Lord, tragically abducted, tragically kidnapped, taken to ATM after ATM, ended up in Hyde Park, stabbed, slain, murdered. Is that tragic? Of course. This is not about comparing one boo-boo to the other. What this is about is comparing the response of the treatment given after the fact.
That's right.
So we're sorry for the tragic loss of life for that young girl. But what we're saying is, even if you notice the media attention, the reaction of the police on that, as opposed to how it happens in our communities, where now what I've been given is like those murders that happen, they're anomalies, they're abnormal. As opposed to in our community where this is just everyday life, it's normal. You people should just get used to it. It's gonna happen anyway. What can we do about it?
No way.
Right?
No
I know
way.
for a fact that on the day dealing with that Amy Lord situation, when I saw on TV, I saw at least 80 cops right on TV. Cops of every thing, K9 units, detectives, blue coats, paramedic, everything. And I was later informed that the Boston Police Department took off every member of the gang unit from the streets of Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Jamaica Plain, and South End, and sent them all to Hyde Park for that one instance. Once again, evidence. See, because a lot of people too is, well, y'all just gonna rally, you just gonna run your mouth. And granted, I may be long-winded, but when we talk, we're talking about real things
Right.
and putting things in a perspective, trying to show with clarity the difference, what the disparity is. So that treatment of the situation of that murder of that one white girl, as opposed to 100 shootings in our hood, where oftentimes there's no suspect found. And whose fault is that? Well, they say it's ours, because we don't talk to the police. But too many community organizers in our community will tell you the police don't talk to us. They talk to a very small, closed circle of people who generally tend to agree with them. And they certainly don't talk to people like us who have been critical in the past. And unfortunately plan on continuing to be critical, because I don't see anything on the horizon that shows me that they will conduct business any differently than they have since I've been a little boy and decades before that. I'm from this city. I saw the things that happened. I lived through Charles Stewart. I lived through all these murders of these children. And here we are with this count. Why is it sexy? Why are people talking about it? Because we tagged a marathon in it. That's why Twitter went crazy, because we used hashtag Boston One Strong, Boston One, One Boston, Boston Strong. And we brought these things to the attention. Now, what we have to do is use our brains to present solutions.
That's right.
So for that, this is a rally about solutions. I brought mine. If folks heard this on the air or on TV, then they know that I ask people to bring solutions. So hopefully you got it on paper. If not, you got it in your head. And I'm gonna run through mine really quickly, and then I wanna hear your solutions. And then when we're done, a tactic that's usually done at the State House, we're gonna have a so-called quote-unquote lobby day right here at City Hall, right? We're gonna go in there and we're gonna go to the City Council. We're gonna go to the various councilors. Obviously, one councilor is here with us, Charles Yancey. And we're also gonna go to the mayor's office to present what we see as solutions. And after this, I will invite Charles Yancey to come up. And I said, too, because a lot of people called and wondered about politicians coming here, particularly those that are campaigning for mayor. And I tell you, as I told them, that in the spirit of being fair, I believe that if you have not stood with us before, don't stand with us now.
That's right now. I agree with you 100%.
And if you want to do something, then you have more than enough in your bank account, depending on which candidate you are. And you have staff and people that are willing to work with you, and you have a bully pulpit if you're already in office, and you have a bully pulpit as a candidate. So if they want to do something on the violence or whatnot, then please, by all means, do that. Right? But we're going to continue to do what we've been doing and what we think is right. Whether we stand by ourselves or whether we got 100 people or 1,000, over 100,000. You know what I mean? We have to do right because it's right. So here, I'm gonna go through my stuff real quick because it's long. I'm just gonna really give the bullet points. Anybody who has questions about it, obviously we can talk about it at length. But these are things that we've talked about for a while. So I came up with this concept of the Prime Directive. The Prime Directive is prevention, re-entry, intervention, mentoring, and employment. A lot of those services already go on, as we know. But what we got to strive to do is connect those networks and also figure out where the gaps are. Because some people in this city are not getting those services that are out there. Which means we've either done a horrible job of advertising the services that are available, or we've done a horrible job of connecting the people who provide the services to manifest a solid outreach program so that the people who need the help and the services and the resources the most get it. Boston Police Kiosks. Many of you will know I'm no fan of policing, so I'm always wary of calls for more police. because normally that triggers in school to prison pipeline, helps exacerbate the mass industrial prison complex, right? And mass incarceration and whatnot. So generally, I shy away from ideas of policing. So many people in my community talked about community policing and wanted to see a higher presence. I said, well, if we're gonna do that, how can we do it and do it cost effectively and do it in a real and organic manner? And I came up with the idea of kiosks. Now, you'll notice some of these things are already in place in places where they give a damn about the people who live there.
That's right.
So you might notice a kiosk downtown Boston, right? Downtown Boston. Why would a kiosk be downtown Boston? Because it's a major center of commerce, right? And it's somewhere that they care about the people who come through here. It's tourists come through here. We can't afford to take no bad hit on that, right? So there's a kiosk there. But yet in our communities, there are not kiosks, and oftentimes, even when there is a police presence, as the murder on Warren Street, that literally happened. The store was here and the police station is Subway, and there was a murder in the middle of the afternoon on Warren Street in a store that I used to own with an AK-47, right? So there is a certain level of stuff that police proximity is not going to solve. But what we proposed is kiosks. And what shape would that take? Trailers. When you see development in the city of Boston, you see what? You see trailers that they put out, right? So what we want to say is to the big developers in this city, you make billions of dollars in this city, guess what? We need some trailers. Where do we put the trailers? We put them in the already identified hotspots that the city of Boston has already identified. There's about 16 to 17 hotspots that they've identified, and they quote unquote, they fluctuate. This area dies down, this area picks up. So we already know where the most shootings and the crime is occurring. So we take those kiosks and we put them in those very already identified zones, okay? Shouldn't cost the city much money, if anything, and certainly I think it is about time to get the developers to chip in, since they're not doing so good on employment and the rate of our people working in construction. But that's another story for another day. Also, civilian review board. Some people say, well, the city of Boston already has a civilian review board. No, it doesn't. What they have is a co-op. It's called the Community Ombudsman Oversight Panel. It's a 3-member body appointed by Menino, and at one time when they came in, I did not have high hopes. I thought they were going to be a rubber stamp for the mayor, but much to my surprise, every report that they have issued has highlighted problems within the department, within the way that the complaints are received and adjudicated. Do you think they listened? Nope, surprise. So despite the reports from 2008, no changes have been made to improve that system of complaints or none of that. Okay, so we want not just a co-op, and they do not have subpoena powers nor the power to initiate their own investigations. So we say, not only do we say we're going to keep the co-op, and we want to strengthen the co-op and give them those subpoena powers and powers of independent investigation, but also, too, we also want a true civilian review board to work in companion, one with actual citizens that are not appointed by the mayor. So it could be old 80-year-old Miss Jenkins from down the way, and it could be 16-year-old Tyrone could be on the civilian review board. Another issue that has been championed by Manlio and we've stood with. Manlio's Minority Association, Massachusetts Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers. And long time they have been pushing for diversity in the ranks, in hiring, in promotion, and in discipline. Black cops are much like other things where we've heard, last hired, first fired. It is true in the Boston Police Department as well.
Right.
As you saw, the officer who they quickly demoted based on his dropping the ball, I think was the term they used in the media, and somehow he's responsible for the Amy Lord case. Well, nobody dropped the ball on 100 shootings in our hood.
Come on now.
Nobody can get demoted. Can we demote Davis? So we're pushing for diversity in the Boston Police Department as well, because we believe that one way that the community is more likely to get justice is if the body, rank and file, from the lowest job available and the administrative jobs, all the way to the very top jobs, to the top cop, the chief, and everybody else, we believe that we will have a better shot at justice. This is a better shot, not a guarantee. A better shot at justice if the BPD is more reflective of the community that it serves. Also, too, we want to work with community service. Community service in our community, you get bagged for a crime, you get a little probation or whatever, they put you on community service. How do I know? Because I did community service many a time in my youth. And every time when we did community service, even though the crimes we may have committed or the offenses we committed, some of which I was not guilty of, we always got community service, even though despite the crimes were happening in Roxbury, where we did it at, and the court that we came out of, guess where they took us to clean up? West Roxbury, VFW Parkway. Down over there by that little bridge over by Gallivan Boulevard, cleaning up the boathouse. Meanwhile, you got tumbleweeds of paper and beer cans going down Blue Hill Avenue, right? So we have a program that says for community service, we want to see the youth that are involved in community service that you got to clean up where you screwed up, okay? And unless there's some sort of situation like, you know, if you from Humboldt, we're not going to send you to Heath Street to clean up, right? Unless it's a safety issue, you should be cleaning up the communities that you work in, right? Okay, that you offended in. We also want to establish a network connecting the prisoners who are currently incarcerated, because you'll be surprised, many of them have some of the greatest ideas I've ever heard on how to stop crime and stop the violence. And they are locked out. No pun intended, they are locked out of this conversation. Despite their best efforts from men who have trouble making commissary and whatnot, who have pooled their money and their resources, and many of you in this room or in this out here are aware of the work that was done before with Voices from Behind the Walls, where people came out, they made a DVD, a message to these young cats to say, yo, you don't want to end up here. It ain't all it's cracked up to be. So we have to include those voices as well, because there were brothers who, while you were incarcerated, there's no better time to review your errors, right? And they have some ideas as well. Also, too, we want the list that the Boston Police has of impact players. It's a list of about 300 so-called impact players. That's their terms. I don't like a lot of these coded buzzwords. But a list of 300 impact players. Have you ever seen that list? Okay, so we would like, and I have already requested that the BPD make available to concerned people, people who have a track record in this community, people like my brother Salih, if you could raise your hand.
Yes.
Who works with young men and grown men all the time in terms of turning their life to the right direction. Brothers like this brother right here, Rasan Hall, raise your hand please.
Yes.
Right? Who has worked on many issues from the legal aspect. And what we're asking is that the BPD release that list of 300 impact players. Why? Because we want to have a direct outreach campaign to these brothers. Not only to get their mind right, but turn them on to resources and services that we know that are available. And some of those are not city and government resources. It's just stuff like, yo, bro, if you need somebody to talk, here's my number. You can call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not a problem.
Welcome home.
Right? Exactly.
Welcome home.
So that we can be turning these brothers, because contrary to what sometimes the images that are portrayed in the media and whatnot, these are not animals. This is not a race of just crazy Sasquatches who run around the community tearing it up. These are our cousins, our nephews, cats we went to school with, grew up with, played ball with, and whatnot. And if we are not suited to reach them, I can tell you, I don't believe anybody else is better qualified to reach them than us.
Thank you.
All right? And sometimes, once again, the BPD has a very insulated group of people that they always turn to. And we can say evidence now that group, it ain't working. It ain't working. It's hard for you to have these groups and go talk to these cats. We are coming from the same place that they are, so we asked them to free up that list of impact players. Also, too, I already touched on the hotspots. Same thing. With that list of impact players, that list of hotspots, so we'll be able to further target our efforts to go to the areas where it's needed most. This is the last one. I thought of an idea about how to track the guns in the city of Boston. And it's already happening. We just don't have access to the results. Every gun that gets taken off of the streets of Boston, the community wants to know what make, what model is that gun, and what was the make and the model of the ammunition. I tell you why. Because if we pulled off 500 guns off of the street, and if 400 of them are Smith & Wessons, then that shows a pattern, right? And then we may be able to open ourselves up to have lawsuits and protests to put public pressure on the gun manufacturers who know exactly what the hell they're doing, but they don't care because they got gazillions of dollars and they never been pushed on the issue. but we need to get together to push and see which of the ones. We already know the types of guns that are used in street crimes more often than not. 9mm, Tech 9s, maybe a sawed-off shotgun, maybe an AK, maybe a Uzi or whatnot. These are the types of guns that seem to be popular in the street. 40 cals, right? So we know this. But we want to see what the data is so that we can pluck out patterns and whatnot and see if there is ways that we can correlate. The brilliant question that a lady that y'all may know by the name of Nancy asked, which is, where did the gun come from? All right? So not only where did the gun come from, but who made that gun? And let's start holding these people responsible. All right, I don't run my jibs enough. So now, I really want to keep it focused too and just let folks know that right now, we are talking about solutions. So I think, was I pretty clear with my stuff?
Yes, sir.
Those were solutions. That wasn't rhetoric or nothing. Okay, boom. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. I want to bring up Councilor Yancey, and as I told people, I was uncomfortable with having elected speak and candidates for office, but I trust this man because he's been there before when there was no campaign. All right.
Thank you, Jamal. You folks hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Because I'm the soft-spoken city councilor, but I'm kind of angry right now.
Thank you, Counselor. We are too.
I'm a little angry right now.
Can't hear you.
I said I'm angry. We've had far too many of our young people slaughtered in the streets of Boston. And it seems no one cares. So I'm angry about that. I'm angry about what happened to Amy Lloyd. That never should have happened. But we should not have lost a beautiful young man named Stevie Odom, whose parents is with us here today. I'm still angry about Stevie Odom not being here. And we could talk about Tina Prasad or Tiffany Moore. Sadly, the list goes on and on and on. I have a couple of hundred names in my hands right now. I'm angry about that and have been for a long, long time. So I'm not going to share that anger with you right now, but I do have some suggestions, and these are not new. Some have actually been touched upon by Jamal Crawford. I'll just go through a few right now. What's wrong with hiring an army of mentors for our young people?
Yes.
What's wrong with that? I'd rather hire 300 mentors, youth workers, street workers, whatever you want to call them, outreach workers, than another 300 police officers. Police officers are important, they're necessary, but they're not part of the solution in terms of being involved before the fact, not after the fact. So number one, I want to hire 300 youth workers and street workers. And their job would be to intervene with our young people and young adults before the shots are fired, before an individual thinks about dropping out of school. So this is not a new proposal. I've had this proposal for a better part of the last 10 years. And my colleagues on the City Council, with few exceptions, votes no every year on it, claiming it costs too much money. Well, let me just tell you, I have some familiarity with the city's budget after serving in that office for 30 years. And I know that we spend more than $40 million a year on police overtime, just the overtime portion. We appropriate $30 million a year, but every year, the police manage to overspend the overtime budget by more than $10 million. It would take $10 million to hire the mentors I'm talking about. So when it comes to investing in preemptive programs, we don't have the money. But when it comes to police overtime, there are no questions asked. So that's number one. Secondly, we must require that every city department, and most especially the Boston Police Department, reflect the cultural, racial, and gender makeup of the city of Boston.
That's right.
Amen.
At every level. And if they're claiming civil service prevents us from having even one person of color or woman heading up any of the 11 police districts, then I say let's throw away that civil service system and do something that makes sense for the people of Boston. Number 3, remember street workers, youth workers, number 1, increase diversity, number 2. Number 3, we must invest in education. And yes, I'm renewing my call to build a new high school in the city of Boston.
Yes.
So what does that have to do with the violence? Well, if we educate our children, if we provide them with the opportunity to learn and to contribute, they're less likely to get involved in self-destructive activity. They may become angry like me, the more educated they are, but at least they will come up with some creative solutions similar to what Jamal Crawford has just come up with. If they're educated, we must educate our children. And one of my interns suggested a quote, as it has been said, every time you open the door to a classroom, you close a prison cell. I have another idea. Why not use the millions of dollars that are confiscated from drug busts to support programs like Mothers for Justice and Equality, or Tina Cherry's Peace Institute, or drug treatment programs? What about that? Why not reinvest those millions of dollars that after all come out of the community, let's put them back in the community, to establish some youth programs, instead of using it as the piggy bank for the district attorney or the Boston Police Department. I have many, many more ideas, but I will close on this one. We must hold every city employee accountable to the public. Every city employee, from the mayor to the city council, to every employee, including, not excluding, but including the Boston Police Department. We must have a civilian review board.
Yes.
Over the last 30 years, I must have filed it 15 times. Let's make it pass this year. We need a civilian review board that is independent of the police department, that has subpoena power, and that will not have an axe to grind against any individual police officer, because I believe our police officers risk their lives for complete strangers every day. They deserve to be respected and supported. But, and this is a big one, if one of them crosses the line and abuses any resident or visitor of Boston, they too must be brought to justice. And we cannot expect the police to police themselves. So I have a few other ideas that I will pass on right now. But I believe the recommendations made by Jamal Crawford and my very modest offerings here make a lot of sense. They make a lot of sense. And I make no apologies for it. I believe, even if the Globe doesn't agree with me, we must build that high school, because we have 4,000 Boston Public High School students from the substandard facilities. I will continue to fight for that. But right now I want to say thank you to Jamal Crawford for bringing us together, and I will reluctantly, in spite of my anger, of all the lost lives, in spite of my anger, for the sexism, racism, and homophobia that plagues this city, in spite of the fact that we had to fight and demonstrate for Reverend Ashlyn Williams, who was killed by the police department, to get some basic justice, and that same police department administration fell all over themselves to compensate the Snellgrove family. They deserve compensation, but so did Reverend Anson Williams.
That's right.
So, Jamal, don't get me started. I am angry. Let's give Jamal Crockett a round of applause.
Thank you, sir. All right. And one quick thing about Councilor Yancey is, you can't say he don't show up. You can't say he ain't been there. And not to mention, what is it, 28 years of the book fair? 27 years of doing a book fair, providing our kids with more opportunities to read. And as we know, education is another deterrent to violence. Right now, I want to bring up our sister Kim Odom, who's going to say a couple words.
Thank you, Jamal. I too appreciate Jamal for gathering us all here today at City Hall Plaza. It has been very important to me. Always, as a minister, I'm concerned about our community. But I have to admit that in the aftermath of the violence touching my family, very up close and personal, it put me even more on the front lines. I want to thank Councilor Yancey for acknowledging my son Stephen. I also want to say this, that before Stephen Odom, there were so many other young people, too many.
That's right.
After Stephen Odom, there's too many young people who are losing their lives. And, you know, I've always, in the aftermath, certainly been one of the ones who have wanted to be where everyone's trying to come together for solutions. What you said, Jamal, the solutions. And I think that you outlined, you really outlined them perfectly. I think one of the things that I have learned in the aftermath, one of the questions I asked was, who's doing what? How's it being done, and how can I add value to that? And so in my quest to learn those things, I ended up having to leave a job that I worked for almost 10 years in insurance, and I took a job with the Boston Public Health Commission. I've since left that job in January, but I learned this, that the Center for Disease Control has deemed violence a public health issue. And so my concern and my wonder is, if we know that it's a public health concern, then why don't we have in our schools a curriculum that deals with conflict resolution and the trauma that our young people are impacted by every day? That should be a curriculum in all the schools. It shouldn't be in some schools. I know that the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute does have the peace curriculum in some of the schools, but it's not in all the schools. And in terms of so many other things, and our young people going into the prison system, you know, and coming out of the prison system, or going into the DYS facilities and coming out of DYS facilities. What is the reentry protocol of how we're helping our young people deal with whatever they're going through on their inner being, that spiritual thing that's, you know, confusing them, but how do we help them to process back into the community? And if we're all here saying that we're about solutions, then we all have to be about rehabilitation. We all have to be about redemption. You know, some people don't want to forgive others for their wrong. And I'm not saying that a person shouldn't be held accountable for their wrong. Yes, they should be held accountable. They should be given that opportunity to even acknowledge their wrong, but give them an opportunity to correct something. You know, they can't bring, if they take another person's life, certainly they can't take that person's life back. But we can't write people off and say that, you know, that's it, the end of the story. Because if you say that's the end of the story, it just keeps perpetuating the violence that we see happening in our city every day. So yes, we want to hold our officials that are above us accountable for the things that they can do, but we want to hold ourselves accountable as community for the things that we can do. So I just thank all of you for being here today, and I pray that this is not the end, but certainly the beginning of some greater things to come. Thank you, Jamal.
All right. So before we move on, I just want to take some time, you know, and acknowledge some people. I mean, look around. I don't want nobody to ever let them try to put us in a box. Like, you know, we're one type of group. Look at this. Look around. You see young people. You see older people. You see white people, black people, Latino people, and probably a couple of nationalities I'm missing, right? So the whole thing is that really we are unified on principles and ideals. We want to see a stop to the violence. We want to see a city where everybody is equal, treated equally, where law enforcement and the governance is administered equally, and that's what we want to see. So to that end, one thing that we have here is the Boston Black Agenda. In that agenda is 12 sectors, if you will, of things that make up for society. You know, health, education, you know, crime, violence, those type of things. So right now, everybody who has the cards, if you can kind of pass them out amongst the crowd to make sure everybody has this. It's online. You go on there and you enter your ideas, just like we have ideas today. Enter your ideas into the Boston Black Agenda, because we will be compiling a final document that will be there for you know, for the future, and it will hopefully be used as a vehicle to drive policy. I want to thank all the people from Mothers for Justice and Equality, bringing out all the youth from Mothers for Justice and Equality. Y'all call them the Youth Advocates group, right? Youth Advocates. All y'all raise your hand, because I've been seeing y'all all down the hood, all in front of Hibernian Hall, walking around, doing all your work. Seeing you everywhere, getting the emails, so we'd like to thank them. Of course, always love and respect to the Odoms as well. You know, and really, there are people who have been pioneering on the front lines, you know, for these issues. Miss Priscilla and Sarah Flint, as well, two leaders from MJE. Of course, our good counselor. But I really just want to see here and really make people take note of what a broad group this is. So now, let's continue, and I just had to change a plan too. Since I know City Councilor Tito Jackson, who was just here for a brief minute, has a 4 o'clock hearing, or a working group rather, and I know many others is getting close to the end of the day. So I think our time is better spent when we leave here, after hearing some more ideas. When we leave here, you know what we do? We go straight to the mayor's office. That's right. And we demand from the mayor that he and his commissioner, in this little bit of time they got left, set up that community meeting that they've been avoiding coming from us for at least 5 years, about coming into the community and hearing from us. Not us hearing from them on how great they're doing and we witnessed them patting themselves on the back for a couple of hours. No, but them coming in and hearing these ideas and hearing these solutions from us. And then we got to fight to make sure they implement them. Okay, so y'all been to a poetry spot before? Open mic?
Yeah.
This is a solutions open mic. Who goes first?
Thank you, brother.
Yes, indeed.
Much love, family, much love. I am Zakia Alake. Just a quick suggestion. I would like to go back to something that we started out of the Black Community Information Center, I would say 2005. Some of us call it peacemakers, people educating all communities everywhere, Roxbury first in the world. We started in the wake of the fact that 4 brothers were killed in one weekend. I think it was Franklin Field area. And we went through the community. People asked us to come in. Security we define broadly, jobs, education, and to put spotlights on violence. So some of us, I dropped the ball on it. I'm willing to pick it back up, and I'll put something on Facebook. I'll put something on Bostonian, Blackstonian, and other places. But that was an effort that people appreciated on a grassroots level. We didn't do it for formal fashion. We did it to bring people resources like mental health services. The kind of work that I do, where I'm not a clinician, I connect people, like Jamal was talking about, coming out of prison, to resources, what few there are. So just a thought, I want to bring back peacemakers in every neighborhood. You call it what you feel in your neighborhood, but that we walk, we talk, we love people, we hug them, and we give them the resources that we know exist, and we keep track of it. Peace.
Okay, good. Here we go.
Everybody. I'm Reverend Betty Collier, and I've been around for about 100 years here in Boston. And I just want to say that this is just so excellent for us to come out and to support Jamal and what he is doing. I believe that the mantle was thrown on him for him to try and get us together. All of my speaking and preaching in the city of Boston, I've been saying that we need to come together in unity, that we're too divided as a race of people, and especially us as ministers. And I do believe, now my part that I want to say is that I believe that we could do better
be afraid with God on your side. How can you be afraid of anybody or anything? So this is what I wanted to add. We as ministers should be leading the fight behind the one that the mantle was put on to lead the charge and backing him up. Because we're the ones that's supposed to be standing for justice and righteousness.
Thank you. Somebody else? Oh, no, I'll take that. Come on, yeah, don't be shy. Up high.
Thank you, Jamal. My name is Sally Rowe. I'm second vice president of the Boston Society of Vulcans, which is the union component for firefighters of color in the city of Boston. Couple of things, thank you. Couple of things really quickly. The culture for the Boston Fire Department, the Boston Police Department is more similar than dissimilar. Our functionality in the community is different, but the culture is virtually the same. So a lot of the things that propagate the problems between the police department and the black community, black and Latino community, happens right on the job of the fire department that I'm on now. A couple of things. I didn't bring the paper with me because we live in a technical age where I've already submitted my ideas and my suggestions to Jamal through the Boston Black Agenda. Two things. You guys remember Madison Park used to have a vocational center?
Yes.
Where people who may or may not have wanted to go to college were taught the trade. Boston Fire Department, through the Boston Society of Vulcans, has submitted essentially a vocational high school to fire department pipeline. To whereas right now, black and Latino people are readily not getting these jobs because of what's called veterans preference. For the most part, especially up here in the north, black and Latino people do not go into the military that often. It's more of a southern thing for black and Latino people. But up here, we usually don't go. They're using that as a kind of a checkpoint to keep us off these jobs. So that the numbers, we see the attrition of black and Latino firefighters go down, down, down. White firefighters go up, up, up. What that does is change the political landscape within the fire department. Local 718 is one of the most powerful locals in this city. That absolutely changes a lot of things for what happens, the facilities and resources that are allocated to the black and Latino community. Two, heard a lot of talk about education. And it's usually used as an umbrella term. My thing is, what kind of education? It's asinine to think that anything, anyone, any of the solutions here will work without a more comprehensive and complete definition of racism and how it works in our community. It's asinine to think that any of us, because we are close to the situation simply out of proximity or through a process of osmosis, we're close to racism, so we can understand the nuances. That's ridiculous. You have to study racism. You have to study the system of white supremacy and understand how it affects our community. So, with that, is Councilor Yancey still here? Oh, okay, he's gone. So, but the thing is that since he has a book drive, one of the things that we have, the Boston Society of Vulcans and another organization that I spearhead called Face and Love, we have put together a curriculum complete with textbooks, complete with authors, complete with lecturers that will teach us really what racism is and how it affects us psychologically, to the point where black life is not only devalued by others, but especially by us through a mechanism of self-hate. So, we have submitted this. It's real. Anybody that wants it can contact me through Jamal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Somebody else? Yeah, next up, don't be shy. I don't have to come down every time, do I?
Well, we can go to the mayor.
Somebody else, come on.
Brother, excuse me.
We got more comments? Come on. This is the Solutions Open Mic.
Thank you, Jamal. My name is George Hopkins. I represent an organization in Cambridge called My House Wellness. I'm a restorative justice circle keeper and a mediator. I also do outreach in Roxbury at Step Rocks Recovery Center. And what I found to be my experience here in Boston, and I've been shot, stabbed, I was in the school to prison pipeline when I was 10 years old. I'm recovering from a lot of that now, and I came back to the community to do some work. And what a lot of people talk about when they talk about our communities is the people that aren't doing anything, that don't care, that aren't motivated, that aren't trying to do something better. And my experience has been different. What I've seen is people that can get together after they come to something like this if they have something to do. Everything I go to afterwards, people are like, well, what can we do? So we can go to the mayor's office. But I respectfully submit to everybody here that we find something to do collectively besides that, besides today. That we just keep on with that as our motion. Because I'm telling you, if you're counting on the brothers that have been shot and stabbed and in prison half their lives to come out here and speak to you, they're in short supply because they're busy right now getting shot and stabbed and going to jail, man. So if we're out here and we're really about this, let's take this from here and bring it home. Thank you.
Is this on? Hey, Jamal, I want to make you put this together. It's about community, it's about the movement. When anybody say movement, it's now. I mean, all the Trayvon Martin, Oscar Russell, Oscar Riggs, and all this death that happened, it's because we've been silent in our community too long. See, my man could have been mine, Trayvon Martin. Okay, and the point, because he could have been mine, that's about community and families. You know, African Americans, that's about our culture. Okay, we're about love and culture, but we ain't showing no love to each other. It shows us the mental breakdown somewhere as well as spiritual. See, there's two things right now we're going through right now. It's biblical. It's religion and spirituality. Let me tell you what religion difference is. Religion is more man-made, money profit-oriented. It's about getting paid. People taking a spiritual commitment and exploiting it. You can't do that. Okay, spirituality is about your relationship with God. Sometimes it takes life and death. It took me out of a reality check for me. But like I said again, the movement is powerful because I give God praise because 7 years ago, He woke me up over the movement, you know what I'm saying, over accident rather, and it kind of let me see exactly what my purpose was. I'm an activist, community artist, and so many other things great, and I've been in corporate for about 15, 20 years up to one time, man, but now, I say this to say, we gotta come together for this movement because it's black, white, it's all cultures, but we suffer the most. See his background? Way back when, 1492, when Boston was found, a lot of us came out of slave ships. We lived in this area, which you can now afford right now. My grandmother lived to be 92. She was cleaning houses until she was like 85. So we gotta break the cycle. I don't share this because it's powerful. We have a lot of these histories because of indenture. We've been everywhere. So when people talk about we're lazy people, they're lying to us. We're the most powerful people in terms of our culture. And no one love, really, to be honest, because we're God's first children. I'm gonna keep it real with you. We're His first. A lot of people can't say that. It's true. We're His first children. Okay, so I'm keeping it real with you. But I think this movement is about us seeing each other as brothers and sisters as we are. The Bible tells us if you don't love your brother, the love of Christ is not in you. So if you hate your brother, the love is not in you. Okay, that's biblical. So the movement that God brought to my spirit is called the Independent Civil Realists. Think about it. It's the extension of the Civil Rights Movement way back when, 80 years ago, where if you're independent, let me explain to you, no one has to tell you what to do. It's in your mind already, you know someone raised you to know right from wrong. So you know that part. The civil part is that you choose a higher road. Yeah, you could quit, you could be barbaric, which is animalistic, which is not us. We want some regal. We want to come to understanding, we can understand each other, okay? The real part is that we're not given no script. You hear me? We're not given no script. So we have to make choices in life about what's the right thing to do, at the same time be responsible and accountable for our actions. Now everybody seems to right now, a lot of black Americans are in jail right now. I don't know why it is, but that's a socioeconomic breakdown and cry out for us. Here is the West Coast, it's about 80,000. It's 80,000 capacity. There's 60,000 above, which is 140,000 above jail capacity. That's just the West Coast. It's not Midwest or even the East Coast. So it's almost like a crazy astronomical number, you know what I mean? But like I said again, I'm going to hold this special event, and I hope that RCC was very central. It's about this movement. I would love everybody to come out for it. All the schools, all the civic churches, it's about everybody. We have to put our time in to say that we care enough to love ourselves as a culture, as human beings, of course, that we can be civil. At the same time, we can take our stands, of course, and do the right thing for the right reasons, the right now. Am I saying something wrong that we can't relate to anybody?
Nah,
okay, this is real. This is now. This boom is now. It's not 80 years ago. It's now. So I need everybody to step up and come together. I'm gonna grab a piece of paper. Maybe they can sign their name to it. Emails or just I said emails with your names. That'd be great. Like I said, the movement's coming up sometime.
we're dealing with the 100 shooters.
No, please don't support it. I hope that we can do this because it's real right now. We need it now. As I said, Trayvon Martin among many, Oscar Grant among the time. This has happened too long, too consistency. But listen, take care of everybody. Definitely God bless.
This is also this is secondary.
All right, I just want to wrap everything up and thank everybody for coming out. My name is Cornell Mills. I'm an associate of Jamal, and I just want to first give Jamal a big round of applause because really at the end of the day, we're all here because of one man's vision. And for all of you who are standing here, you all are capable of the same vision that this man has, that I have, that Martin and Malcolm had. We don't need one leader to run or guide us in the future. We got the blueprint. We know what it takes. It takes numbers. It takes accountability. And your showing up shows that you care. Yeah. So understand that the step you made to be here today is a big step.
That's right.
So stay involved. Stay in tune with the organizing. I'm here. Most of us are here because we're angry. I'm tired of seeing the memorials. I'm tired of having to drive my kids to school, out of fear whether or not they're going to make it home at night. So let's stay organized. Let's continue to work together and do something and understand that the power is in you. It's in you. You can make change. You can make things happen. So thanks for coming out. We're going to go on inside and attack the mayor's office and make our message heard firsthand. All right.
All right, so everybody, let's all go up into the mayor's office. Mayor's office is on the 5th floor. For those that want to take the elevators, you can take the elevators. I'm gonna walk up the stairs, 5th floor. Let's meet. Just congregate right quick so we get our game tight up in that 5th floor lobby.
Remember that we'll be searched as we go in.
Yes, yeah, you got us getting searched, federal protection. So if you got a switchblade on, you leave it out here. No.
Go hide it somewhere.
Big step.
Everybody can go around me. I'm gonna take a minute. Yeah, go around. Everybody put your stuff in and put it inside. Yeah, keys. Change those triggers.
was a little vaguer than, you know, everyone's voice. I said, I know you.
Oh, I'm ready to work out too. That's what it was. My heart's not pumping hot enough.
Everybody's been to City Hall before, right? Yes. Okay. That's the city council chamber. That's where they have all the hearings. Around that corner and around that corner are like two hallway corridors where all the little councilors' offices like off of there. Right through this door here is the beginning of the mayor's office. I don't even think he's on this floor. I think his office might be the floor, but that's like the office reception area or whatever. Right? There's still more coming? Anybody else around that corner? Or just our group? Anybody right there? You see? No? This is our whole group now? This is the whole group. Jake, you and Barney will end the line, all right? Okay. So could everybody, huddle up right quick? I just want to get a quick head count before we go in here to the mayor. Jesse, you can start from over there and give me a head count, please. It's all good. We get it. All right. $43. I just want to be accurate with the numbers so that we know that 43 people here who are citizens who vote. Well, I hope you all vote. Right. But whether you vote or not, you certainly pay taxes. Right. Everybody's like, yeah. All right. So we're gonna go in here and talk to somebody from the thing. The mayor is not here, but we will obviously record this as well so that we have it for our own purposes for posterity. They can't deny that we were here, and we will push this at the means at our disposal, like social media and whatnot, to shame the devil.
And how many are
43.
44.
44 or 44?
Knocking at your door.
45. All right.
You're alive.
45. Now we got
Okay, man.
Yeah. Just fill it in as much as possible, y'all.
Stand up. Stand up. I used to say things about the school department, we should be doing a 24-hour until they change things. And we'll disrupt. We don't disrupt.
Spender, could you get everybody over there to kind of mosey this way? I just want to have a tight new group. Yep, seats over here too. Everybody want to sit down. Move forward, move. Jake, give me a new head count.
Can someone hold this while I get in it? No.
Violence, public safety, and really here to demand a meeting with the mayor and the commissioner, the one that they would attend, obviously not one right now, but one that they would attend in the community, which I've been pushing for about 5 years, and they've been, let's say, reluctant. So this group here, as you can see, is a very diverse group representing many different organizations. Whoever you feel as though is the appropriate person, hopefully somebody, you know, maybe higher up would be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Kanibi.
Yeah, that's true too. If Mr. Kanibi's here,
Oh, yeah.
he'd love to see him.
Yeah. And just ask her if somebody. She's the one who's scheduled for your back. Yep.
No, we're not meeting with them. We're here to insist upon a public meeting if you so.
All right, I'll give you.
Excuse me? Yeah, a public, yes, that's what we're asking for. A public meeting with the mayor and the commissioner. This the same meeting, if you remember, that we've been calling for like 4 or 5 years to meet with the community, to talk about the relationship, the community and our strategies to deal with violence. So, what was the new head count? 45. All right. That was Reverend Culpepper, for those who know Reverend Culpepper.
Wait, you have a mayor?
Excuse me? No. We gotta be careful with some of them, I know.
Sorry. Who are you looking to speak to? You can ask Jamal right there in the black. Jamal?
Yes.
She'd like to speak with you.
Hello, how are you doing? She doesn't want to be taped, so I mean.
Cornell Mills. What's your title? Assistant.
So you guys,
A lot of community activists, organizers, groups like Mothers for Justice and Equality.
nice to meet you. I love your hat.
So yeah, as you see, a wide group of citizens, very diverse, representing all ages, races that make up the city of Boston. All of us are voters. All of us are taxpayers and citizens. Pardon. Okay, and so the reason we're here, we just had a little rally outside, a rally for solutions around the issue of violence in our city. And as you may or may not be aware, The tally has recently gone over the 100 mark of shootings that have occurred since the Boston Marathon. And as lately you've seen in the news, the responses in terms of law enforcement to both the marathon, which was a ridiculous tragedy, right? And the recent murder of Amy Lord, which was also very tragic. But what we're here to do is ask for the mayor and the police commission to have a public community meeting that we will schedule at a time that works for everybody, which I've tried to do for the past 4 or 5 years, which they've been reluctant to do so, to deal with communities' direct requests and proposals for solutions. This is a very smart group, all right, and there's a lot of ideas that came out of the rally that we just did. I have some on paper I'd like to leave with you.
Sure, that would be great.
And we need to get this meeting ASAP, because as I said,
is there a way you can contact your call?
Yeah, I can grab a card for you, and the best way is to just, you know, I can talk to you on the phone, but it's to lay it out.
We'll talk to him on the phone, talk to the mayor, let him know we're here.
The mayor, he's not in, he's actually out right now at the, a meeting, so he's not in the building. I would let him know to get some fans here.
It's important to me, at least for me, the way that I organize it, because one of the easiest ways to get marginalized is to act out of character. So as long as we keep our message focused and clear, we keep dignity, we keep respect, decorum, then we can't be defeated because the truth is on our side. Right, exactly. When it's time to fight, let you know. Just let us know. Some of us doing that at the time.
Can't believe I lost the damn paper with the damn solutions on it. That's not good. I emailed too.
She'll walk me on camera.
We will occupy this office the next time we have to come here if the mayor does not answer. There will be a bigger group of people who are planning to occupy. That's the how is getting our message to you. And that's what we're going to do.
Do we think an appropriate time to respond is what, 7 days?
No.
That's too much?
1 is too many, 100 is unacceptable. So we don't have.
So we got to.
I'll touch you soon. If you want to send that email
Yes,
out tonight, I'll have an answer for you.
Thank you.
By middle of this week. So
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing.
Appreciate it. Thank you so very much. All right. She said a couple of days, it's fine. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Okay, so now if we could leave as orderly as we came in and make sure you got all your trash and stuff with you.
That's right.
They got my bag for me. Thank you.
Okay, grab. I'll bucket and go. Oh, you got it. I'm so you got it.
It's not okay.
Hey. How you doing? Nice to see you.
There's a meeting at Vine Street that teams of T.O. Jackson is putting on right now. If anybody wants to go. Follow up to the hearing. Follow up to the gun violence hearing.
Laid up.
Stay safe. I'll talk to you in the morning, okay?
Yes, sir. I'm Mr. Miles. Nice to meet you.
It's Dixie.
It's all good.
All right. Great sound. All right. You got this already? That's the gist of how this came about. Give you a backdrop of the solutions that we had. We've asked for.
What station is she from?
I have no idea.
You didn't ask?
That's a good question. I'm sure Jamal knows though. Don't ask him.
No. Keep it a secret. Well, keep it a secret.
Jamal, I know you said it this morning, I was already out. I wanted to see if I could.
Great job.
Thank you, man.
All right.
Yes, it is. I see. Well, because of the attention that we got, and with about the city limit, we had 68 victims who lost their tragedy. Who lost their life at the marathon, and then another one was officer. So the reaction was that this massive amount of people had a small amount of people killed, and there was a lot of attention to it. People in my community were saying, well, hell, we have a lot more killed and a lot more wounded because, of course, every shooting we have is on murder. And so on and so forth, so the violence and the stabbing and everything else. So the violence is the basic argument.
Yeah, the whole state of Florida, you know, like
so
we
we
just like
started
kind of
marking
float away.
shootings since the
Seriously.
other times
I feel like
analogy came up
a lot of these disorganized
the Lord case actually, because here again, you have one victim, tragic as it is, one victim, young white woman, and the attention of the media and politicians and so on and so forth built a huge community meeting in South Boston. In my community, why don't we get the same level of responsibility? And then also, too, sometimes because of the commission, they say we've met niggas on the times. The difference is when they come to the South Boston community, we get a very sympathetic police force, a very sympathetic city government. When they come to our community, it's almost accusatory. It's very aggressive and very closed-minded and not open to any critique or any indication that they could possibly be doing a better job, or that they may be performing poorly. And so then it kind of turns into a tit-for-tat. And in that, you get lost where the police and the mayor only meet or frequently meet with those people who share their ideas. They have a very close group, and what we're trying to do is say, hey, look, we live here, we pay taxes here, we vote here, we work here. Many of our people have been victims of violence. I got a bullet wound on my shoulder. And so what? I can't be in the conversation because you don't like the fact that I disagree with some of your policies? Tough. So we're bring it here, and then bring it there to really push this step forward. And knowing how media works, sensationalism, why not the marathon? It was like the biggest news story of the year, and now this Amy Lord thing. And so we've done with the kind of flipped little media jiu-jitsu what normally happens with us when our stuff is sensationalized, just the violence, with no kind of substantive anything in the back. So we're trying to be proactive, once again, rally for solutions. We put that in the title, rally for solutions. Not just another time, you know what I'm saying? Put your hands in the air and get your slogans. Getting into these schools. I just want to share it.
Exactly, and then you got the whole other
Oh, certainly. Evidenced by the fact that it's here. The group that it resonates with online. Jacob, can you come here for a second?
Are you serious?
What is the last count on our views for the show stuff? 168,000? Our page views. Since we started doing the marathon, we've gone from about 15,000 people to about 168,000. And it's certainly revamped and taken on Twitter and tweeted and the Globe has picked it up, the Boston Magazine has picked it up, the Herald has picked it up, TV stations have picked it up. Many of them have used it, giving us no credit. This is the graphic design genius that I work with, Jake Ladoff, who we had the idea, hey, let's do something with the marathon. We played around with the Boston Strong imagery, and we got this count. Just one of those things where everything just kind of came together at the right moment, and we're able to use that momentum to impact.
JFK, right around JFK, a long while ago.
Tonight we'll put